She said, "I can't stand him anymore." What he discovered left her heartwarmingly transformed. Jake wiped the grease from his hands and took a deep breath, stepping into the warm, fragrant kitchen where laughter usually filled the air. But tonight felt different. As he sat at the table, he could feel the tension simmering, like the pot of pasta boiling over. The smell of marinara hung heavy, a stark contrast to the unease he felt brewing among his family. Emily, his wife, glanced at him with an intensity he hadn't seen in a long time, her resolve firm. "I can't stand him anymore," she erupted, her voice breaking the silence, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. In that moment, Jake felt the world around him spin, a crushing blow that knocked the breath from his chest. The words hung there, heavy with years of unvoiced pain and frustration. For the past decade, he'd thrown himself into work at the auto shop, believing he was doing right by them, sacrificing evenings and weekends to keep the family afloat. But instead, he had become a ghost in his own home, a stranger to his wife and children. As he looked into Emily's eyes, he saw not the love he cherished, but a growing despair that practically yelled, "Where have you been?" Days turned into weeks. Jake started spending evenings at the community center with other veterans like himself, sharing stories filled with camaraderie and sacrifice. Yet, even there, the shadows followed him, reminders of the family dinners he missed. Meanwhile, Emily poured herself into volunteering at the local school, igniting a passion for teaching and nurturing those children that felt long lost. She smiled more now, but with that smile grew a questioning of her own worth outside wife and mother. Each day brought its own blend of hope and heartache. As misunderstandings deepened, their friends could only watch in sympathy, witnessing the emotional distance grow between the couple. Awkward encounters followed every conversation, and with each misstep, Jake and Emily drifted further apart, lost in lonely thoughts about dreams and sacrifices gone awry. Then came the day of the local hero event, where Jake would be honored for his service. He felt a mix of pride and dread, but everything changed as he found himself witnessing a neighbor struggling to feed their children. At that moment, he found courage, standing up for that family against the backdrop of economic inequality and reminding his community of the importance of lending support to one another. Emily watched from a distance, her heart swelled with mixed emotions. There he was, Jake, the man she once admired, standing tall for someone else, reminding her of the kindness and compassion they used to share. Her heart fluttered. Could he be rekindling his spirit in ways she thought long gone? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As that night unfolded, Emily felt a realization dawn on her. The struggles they faced mirrored those of their neighbors. Perhaps they weren't as alone as they thought. Together, they could confront what had kept them apart. With the warm glow of community surrounding the event, Jake's act of bravery sparked something bright within her. A glimmer of hope began illuminating the path back to each other. But just as she started to take a step toward their shared past, their eyes locked, all questions and uncertainties suspended in the air. Could they bridge the widening gap before it was too late? Jake could hardly shake off the weight of that night. He lay in bed long after Emily turned off the lamp, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. The very idea that his wife had reached her breaking point stung deeply. He felt that familiar mix of dread and urgency pulling him in two directions, the longing to connect and the insurmountable fear of failure. In the days that followed, he found himself constantly distracted at the shop. The engine noises faded into the background as visions of Emily filled his mind, the way her laughter used to ring through their home, her gentle touch as she brushed her fingers through their children's hair. It was those tiny moments he had taken for granted, the life that now felt more like a fading dream. One afternoon, as he wiped down a pickup truck, he spotted someone across the street. It was Emily, interacting with their kids outside the school. The sun was angled just right, illuminating the joy on her face. He realized just how much he missed that joy, their joy. It was a stark reminder of what he was fighting to reclaim. Feeling an ache inside him, he let go of the truck door and headed towards the school. With every step, determination coursed through his veins. This time, it was his turn to take action. He reached the playground, witnessing Emily bent down, showing a young girl how to tie her shoes. The tenderness of the moment struck him harder than any wrench could. "Hey," he said, his voice a mix of nervousness and hope. Emily looked up, surprise flickering in her expression. "Jake, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," he replied, stepping closer. "I've been thinking a lot about us." The weight of his words hung in the air, and he searched her face for any sign of what she might be feeling. Instead, there was uncertainty, yet a spark of curiosity shone through. "Jake," her voice faltered. "You're busy with the shop. I don't want to get in the way of your work." "No, I need to be with you. I've been working myself to the bone, thinking that was enough. But I see it now, I see how it has affected us." His heart raced. "I've missed so much." Before she could respond, one of their sons came bouncing over, interrupting the moment. "Mom, look. I made a new friend." His bright eyes were filled with pure delight, a beacon of innocence in their complicated world. Emily's smile returned, but the shadow of doubt still lingered in her gaze. "That's great, honey. I'm so proud of you." Jake watched as their son rushed back to play. There was a rhythm to it, a shared heartbeat under all the chaos. He reached for Emily's hand, and to his surprise, she let him. Her fingers felt warm and familiar, grounding him in a way that nothing else ever had. "You deserve more than just a shell of a marriage. We can find our way back." Her breath hitched slightly, a mixture of vulnerability and hope flickered in her eyes. "What if we try? Just step by step?" A smile broke through the remnants of their tension, and suddenly, the air felt lighter. They stood there, hands intertwined, surrounded by laughter, children playing, and the life they had built together. But just as they began to breathe in the flicker of something new, a sharp voice caught them off guard. "Jake, is that you?" It was Ryan, a fellow veteran from the community center, charging toward them with excitement in his eyes. Jake felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Would this interruption set them back again? Would their moment slip away like so many others? The uncertainty loomed, threatening to overshadow the small step they had taken. As Jake turned to face his friend, he couldn't help but wonder, would this be the breakthrough they needed, or just another roadblock on the way to healing? Ryan bounded over, his energy infectious, but Jake could feel the moment slipping. He forced a smile, even as anxiety clawed at the back of his mind. "Hey, Ryan. Good to see you." Ryan's gaze darted over to Emily, lingering for just a second too long. "You too. Didn't he know you were around here? You're always deep in those engines." Trying to redirect the focus, Jake nodded. "Yeah, just wrapped up a few jobs. I was actually just talking to Emily about the community center this weekend, right?" Ryan blurted out, oblivious to the moment they had just been sharing. "We could really use your expertise with the fundraisers." Jake's heart sank. He glanced at Emily, whose smile faded slightly as she processed the interruption. "We do need all hands on deck, Jake," she said, her tone more businesslike now. "Yeah, sounds great," Jake said, forcing a casualness he didn't feel. Turning to Ryan, he added, "Maybe we can catch up later?" "Of course. Let me grab my notes and I'll be right back." Ryan darted off, leaving Jake standing there, acutely aware of the heaviness in the air. Emily sighed. "That was unplanned." "Yeah," Jake agreed, running a hand through his hair. The warmth of her hand was now distant, slipping through his fingers like sand. "I wanted to talk about us. I didn't want anything to distract us. Jake, I know things have been tough, but we're still here in this mess together. It's not just about you changing, it's about both of us leaning into this again. We can't wait for perfect moments. Life is messy." Her voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability under her words. Jake felt the knot in his stomach loosen a little as he absorbed her honesty. "You're right. It's just hard to break old habits, you know?" He looked around at the playground, at the laughter echoing through the air. I want our kids to see us happy. I don't want them to worry about any of this. Emily smiled softly, her eyes glistening. They need to see us work through it too, not just be perfect all the time. Their son returned, breathless from the swing set, arms outstretched. Mom, Dad, come play. Joy erupted in Jake's chest. He wanted to chase after that joy, to hold on tight to it. But the weight of reality still lingered, holding them back, just like the little worries that crept in while they smiled. Let us go, Jake said, suddenly determined. We can play. We can be a family today. One step at a time, right? As they joined their son, laughter mingled with lightness, filling them with fleeting happiness. Their connection, though fragile, was there, hovering just at the surface. However, as Jake swung back and forth, he caught sight of Ryan talking to another parent. The tension returned like a shadow creeping in just as the sun began to set. He couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan's presence was a reminder of the life he had been running away from. The laughter of their children rang out across the playground as Jake's mind raced. Was he truly ready to dive headfirst into rebuilding? Was he about to face the past he had ignored for too long? Just then, Emily paused, looking back towards where Ryan stood, a flicker of worry crossing her features. Jake, I think he's been asking about you about us. Jake's heart raced. The invitation could open doors, but it also held the risk of unraveling everything they had begun to stitch back together. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every decision ahead, every question that lingered unspoken. Maybe it's time we faced it. But would stepping forward mean stepping away from what they were beginning to rebuild? Jake felt a rush of unease grip him as Emily's words floated between them, heavier than the fading light of dusk. He searched her face, looking for certainty, but found only the reflection of his own worry. Are you sure? He asked, his voice almost a whisper, the moment feeling too fragile to disturb. I think so, she replied, glancing back at Ryan, who was scribbling notes now, a grin spreading across his face as he animatedly talked to another parent. But it might be worth the risk if we want to figure things out. Taking a deep breath, Jake focused on their son, his laughter bursting through the tension like a bubble of air rising to the surface. The innocence of that joy was enough to remind him why they were here, why they needed to move forward. Okay, let us do it, he said, though a flutter of fear still danced in his chest. As they walked toward Ryan, Jake felt an electric current of anticipation. He had spent so long avoiding confrontations, tiptoeing around his fears and insecurities. Now it felt like stepping onto a tightrope suspended high above uncertainty. Hey, Ryan, Jake called, a forced cheeriness in his voice. As Ryan turned, the brightness in his expression flickered momentarily, like a brief dimming of a light bulb. Jake. Emily. Ryan's enthusiasm returned, undeterred. I've got ideas. We could really turn the fundraiser into something special. He clutched his notes, eyes glimmering with excitement. Looking forward to hearing them, Emily said, her voice steady, but with the tiniest tremor of tension that Jake could sense. Ryan launched into his ideas, the words tumbling out like jumping beans, each one stirring up the emotions Jake was trying to manage. Jake nodded along, attempting to be present, but each suggestion only fueled the anxiety thrumming beneath his skin. As Ryan spoke about things like banners and bake sales, thoughts of the past swirled around Jake's head. Memories invaded his mind, the arguments, the silence, the distance that had grown between him and Emily. It seemed ironic that a community event, meant to bring people together, pinched at the very heart of his struggles. And yet, Emily seemed to find comfort in Ryan's enthusiasm, chiming in with ideas of her own, laughter spilling from her lips. It was easy to see how Ryan made her light up, how his energy contrasted with the shadows that had loomed in their marriage. Jake clenched his hands into fists at his sides, silently battling his insecurity. So, Ryan, he interrupted, the courage surprising even himself. I heard you've been asking about us. What's your angle? The air turned electric, the laughter muted as all eyes shifted to Ryan. Jake felt like he had just tossed a match onto dry leaves, anticipation building in the silence. Honestly, I just want to make sure you guys are okay. Ryan replied, a touch of hesitance weaving into his tone. I can see how things have been for you too. Jake's breath hitched. Really? Because it feels like there's been a lot more than just concern. He thought about the conversations Emily had alluded to, the feelings brushed aside with every surface-level interaction they'd had. Before Ryan could answer, Emily interjected, maybe we've all been avoiding the real conversation. Her voice was both gentle and firm, drawing the attention like a magnet. Jake felt a tremor of hope rise within him, nudging him toward honesty. What if we're all just in different places, still figuring things out? He ventured, a hint of vulnerability softening his tone. Emily's eyes sparkled in gratitude. Exactly. It's okay to take a step back. The moment hung in the air, charged with possibility. Would they break the cycle of avoidance together? Then, a distant shout rang out from a nearby group of kids, pulling him back to the present. Jake squinted toward the source, a sudden dread creeping in. What if we can't rebuild? Ryan's response, whatever it might be, loomed in the spaces between them like the shadow of uncertain futures. The only thing that seemed certain was that they were all at a crossroads, each resolution more fragile than the last. In the distance, the sun dipped lower, the warmth of the day giving way to an uncertain twilight. Jake could sense that everything was teetering on the edge of change, and the next words could either bring them together or pull them apart. But just as Jake prepared for the next step, he caught a glimmer of movement, a child tripping and falling nearby. The moment sharpened. Would they act to support each other or simply watch the fall? Jake's heart raced as he watched the child fall, the laughter around them fading like an echo. Instinct pushed him forward, and without thinking, he called out, "Hey, are you all right?" The words tumbled over one another, urgency spilling from his mouth. Emily tensed beside him, her eyes wide. Ryan stood frozen, his expression shifting from excitement to concern. But before anyone could move, the child pushed themselves up, brushing the dirt from their knees with a toothy grin. "I'm okay," they shouted, laughter bubbling back into the air. Relief washed over Jake, but it was short-lived. The brief moment of lightness had ended with an unsettling reminder of their own struggles. They had all fallen in their own way, but were they truly okay? See? Just a little tumble, Ryan said, trying to ease the anxiety that had returned, his tone light, but Jake noticed the falter in his smile. "Yeah, just like us," Jake murmured, half to himself, half to Emily as he stepped back. Silence stretched again, the knot tightening in his stomach. Emily caught his gaze, an unspoken question lingering in the air. She leaned closer, her voice low. "Jake, we need to talk about this. About us. Right now." The call for honesty felt like a dare, a challenge that made Jake uneasy, but maybe now wasn't the time, not with Ryan standing there bright and eager. "Maybe later?" Jake whispered back, conflict flickering in his chest. "Why later?" Emily's voice was urgent. The tension coiled between them, thick and heavy. "If we avoid it now, it'll just fester." Ryan shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "I can give you guys a minute," he offered, but Emily shook her head. "No, Ryan. You're part of this too," she said firmly. "If we want to know what's really going on, we can't exclude anyone." Jake's palms started to sweat as pressure built in his chest. The three of them were now intertwined in this emotional web, the stakes rising as uncertainty loomed. "Right," Ryan said, his eyes darting between them. "I want to help if I can. Please, just tell me." Jake's heart thudded painfully as he opened his mouth, the words piled up behind his teeth, half-formed thoughts trying to escape. "I think there's a lot we aren't saying. Things have been tense," but Emily reached for his hand, her fingers squeezing tightly, grounding him in the swirling chaos. "It's more than just tension, Jake. We've been drifting, and I don't want to pretend anymore." Ryan nodded, his demeanor shifting from casual observer to concerned friend. "I can see it. You both want to fix this, right?" Jake felt himself falter, the truth weighing heavily on his tongue. "Do we? I'm scared." "What if you and Jake," Emily interrupted, her voice a mix of softness and firmness. "What if we all let go of the past? Just for a minute. Can we find a way through this together? Ryan shifted again, and for the first time, his excitement seemed to be patching over his own worries. You know, it all starts with honesty. Maybe this fundraiser is just the right distraction we need to figure things out. The word honesty echoed in Jake's mind, igniting a small flicker of hope within him. Perhaps this was their moment, a glimmer of possibility shining through the cracks of their discontent. But as Jake looked at Emily, and then to Ryan, doubt gnawed at his insides. Could they really confront the truth? Could it lead to something beautiful, or would it tear them further apart? Let us talk about all of this before the fundraiser, Jake finally said, his words barely above a whisper, ready to embrace the unknown. Surprised glances danced between them, and as he felt Emily's grip on his hand firm up, an inkling of determination began to rise within him. Just as they prepared to dive deeper, another shout pierced through the evening air, a joke shared by Ryan's daughter, drawing all eyes back to the games taking place nearby. Laughter erupted again, a stark reminder of who they were fighting for, and Jake realized how much he longed to be part of that circle of joy. But would this next conversation lead them to healing, or would it reveal even wider rifts? Would they emerge stronger, or would the pressure be too much to bear? The answer hung in the balance, and Jake could almost feel his pulse matching the rhythm of the laughter around them. Jake took a deep breath, the laughter fading again, a murmur lingering in the space between them. He could feel the weight of the moment settling heavily on his shoulders. The stakes felt suddenly higher than just their friendship. It was about healing, about the threads that bound them together: loyalty, fear, love, and uncertainty. Okay, he finally said, his voice steadying. Let us talk. Without releasing Emily's hand, he glanced at Ryan, who nodded resolutely, leaning in as if to catch every word stored behind hesitations. Jake took a moment, gathering his thoughts. The jovial chatter around them began to fade into a muffled background, giving them their own little world for this pivotal conversation. First off, I just want to say, he started, but Emily interrupted, her tone softer now, almost pleading. No, Jake. Let me go first. Jake opened his mouth to argue, but found himself nodding instead, recognizing the urgency in her eyes. I can't stand tiptoeing around each other anymore, Emily admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I feel like we're pretending everything is fine, but it's not. We've let too many things go unsaid. Ryan shifted, his face a mask of sympathy, reflecting the shared weight each of them felt. Jake swallowed hard. What are you scared of? That you won't understand. That this whole situation will become unbearable. We're already there, Jake interjected gently. We're already in that unbearable place. Silence hung heavily before Ryan stepped in. Look, I feel it too. I see the way you both hold back thoughts and feelings that should be out in the open. It's exhausting. It's like we're all stuck in a loop. Jake's anxiety flared momentarily, but Ryan's sincerity anchored him. It's true, he said, his voice raw. Being honest feels risky, like we're on a tightrope. But I think we're at a crossroads, and it's time we choose a direction. Emily's grip on Jake's hand tightened, enough that he felt the warmth radiating from her. What if when we talk it all unravels? What if it does? Jake said, rising to the challenge. What if that's exactly what we need? To let go of all this weight? Ryan glanced between them, frustration masked under a veneer of encouragement. Maybe it's time we addressed our fears head-on. Nothing will change if we stay quiet. Emily leaned closer, encouraged by Ryan's assertiveness. Okay, so let us start with what we really want. I want to feel connected again, not like we're strangers who share the same space. Her words dug deep into Jake, ripping into the layers of anxious uncertainty wrapping around him. I want that too, he confessed, finally laying his truth bare. But I also don't want to ruin what little we have left. In that moment, it felt like they were suspended between decision and consequence, everything hanging in the balance like the child who had earlier fallen. Emily's gaze softened, vulnerability pouring from her like a tangible force. What if we discovered something amazing when we dive in? Something that could build us back up instead of tearing us apart? Ryan nodded fervently. Exactly. Our past doesn't have to define us. We can redefine what we are, together. Jake felt a swell of hope, but also fear. What if the deeper they dove, the more painful it would become? Would they emerge intact? No one wants to drown here, he said, apprehensively looking at both Emily and Ryan. So we got to promise each other to hold on, whatever happens. As their eyes met, a silent agreement sparked in the air, shimmering with potential. In that moment, laughter bubbled up surrounding them again, echoing their earlier feeling of relief. Yet it felt tangled with the seriousness of their conversation, a reminder of what they stood to gain. Could they traverse the depths of their emotions without losing one another? The questions sliced through the laughter, stirring both fear and excitement. But as they leaned in closer together, ready to navigate their own emotional terrain, the journey had truly just begun. Little did they know, just outside their new, fragile connection, a storm was brewing, one that could expose old wounds or fortify their bond in a way they would never see coming. Jake watched Emily's face intently, every flicker of her expression telling him how much this moment mattered. The air felt charged, almost electric, as if the universe held its breath, waiting for them to plunge into deeper waters. Ryan was still nearby, a silent support, but his anxious energy was palpable. "Okay," Emily said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll start." She took a deep breath and steeled her resolve. "I've been feeling so lost lately. Like I'm fighting my own shadows. It's exhausting." Jake's heart ached for her. He wanted to reach out, to reassure her that she wasn't alone in this fight. But he held back, letting her find her voice. "I thought I could just smile through it," she continued. "Laugh it off like one of those bad sitcoms. But inside, I'm scared of losing you both. I feel like I'm pushing you away, but I don't know how to pull you closer." Her words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, he searched her eyes, wanting to convey that she wasn't the only one feeling lost. Ryan leaned forward. "You need to know that we're here for you. We're not going anywhere," he assured her. "You can share your fears without judgment. We're in this together." Emily's eyes shimmered with moisture, and she nodded. I can't help but think about all the things we've been through. It feels like we're standing on this shaky ground. The more I try to hold it together, the more everything feels like it's coming apart. What if we start fresh?" Jake exclaimed suddenly, surprising himself with the strength of his words. "What if we build something new? It doesn't have to look like it did before. We can craft our own story." Emily's expression shifted, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of hope. "You really think that's possible?" "Yes," he said, his conviction growing. "We've already faced the storm. Maybe now's the chance to rebuild. We can create layers of understanding that will support us instead of tearing us apart." Silence settled around them as they absorbed Jake's words. The laughter of people nearby was a distant hum, as though the world outside their bubble had come to a halt. Ryan broke the quiet, his tone serious yet kind. "But Jake, what if we dive in and it's too much? What if we unearth things we can't handle?" "For every wound, there's a chance to heal," Jake replied, looking straight into Emily's eyes. "Isn't that worth the risk?" The moment stretched on, and Jake felt time stand still as they considered the magnitude of his statement. Emily took a deep breath, her presence solidifying before him. "I'm willing to risk it if you both are," she declared, a newfound strength in her voice. Jake could feel the tension lifting slightly, as though a weight had been shared among them. "Then let us do it," he said, optimistic but cautious. But just as they began to breathe in the possibility of a new chapter, an unexpected interruption shook the fragile equilibrium. A figure loomed at the edge of their circle, a face they hadn't anticipated. The arrival of Melissa, the girl from their past who stirred old fears and uncertainties, turned everything upside down. Jake's heart raced. What would this confrontation unravel? Would it strengthen what they had, or threaten to break them apart? Ignoring the chaos outside their conversation felt impossible now. As Melissa approached, he could feel the air grow heavy again, thick with unresolved history. It was a moment they couldn't simply brush aside, and with it came the overwhelming realization that the storm was just beginning. Melissa stood there, her familiar silhouette outlined against the fading light. The smile she wore felt hollow, a ruse to cover the depths of bitterness or regret. Jake's pulse quickened, and he could feel Emily shift beside him, anxiety radiating off her like heat from an oven. "Hey Jake," Melissa said, her voice striking a harsh note in the tender moment they had been trying to cultivate. "I didn't expect to find you here." Jake wanted to retort, to ask why she was intruding now of all times, but instead, he swallowed his anger. This was a fragile moment. Emily needed him to hold steady, even as Melissa's presence threatened to disrupt everything. "Hi, Melissa," he managed to say evenly, trying to brush aside the memories rushing back. Their history filled with laughter and heartbreak echoed loudly in his mind. "What is going on?" she asked, an eyebrow raised, glancing at Emily and Ryan. Emily took a steady breath, gathering every ounce of courage. "We were just talking." "About how we've been feeling talking." Melissa interrupted sharply, her eyes darting to Emily with a mix of jealousy and skepticism. "About what? Your little therapy session? That's rich coming from you." Jake felt the air thicken once more. Emily's hands balled into fists at her sides, and he could sense the storm brewing. This wasn't just a conversation, it felt like a collision course aimed at their new beginning. "Melissa, this isn't the time," Ryan said quietly, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder, a gesture meant to protect and soothe. "We're trying to work through some stuff here." Melissa rolled her eyes dismissively. "Is that what you call it? Working through stuff? Because it sounds like a pity party to me. I thought you two were better than this." "Maybe you don't know us as well as you think you do," Jake said, his voice firmer now, grounding himself against the chaos of emotions swirling around them. Melissa's expression hardened, then softened for a beat. "I thought I did. But clearly things change." A silence fell upon them, weighted heavily by nostalgia and unresolved issues. Jake studied Melissa's face. Behind the bravado, he could see her struggling with something deeper. Maybe a part of her still cared. "Why are you here, Mel?" he asked, the question hanging in the air. He wanted to understand, to peel back the layers she hid behind like an armor. I came to see how things were," she admitted, her bravado cracking slightly. "But now I can see it was a mistake. You've moved on, and I'm just stuck." The rawness of her admission sliced through the tension, bridging the distance between them. Emily's expression shifted, sympathy flushing across her features. They were all fighting their own battles, though they looked so different externally. "What do you want from us?" Emily finally said, her voice steady and strong, surprising herself. "We're trying to build something new, and I don't want your past to haunt our future." Melissa seemed taken aback, as if hit by a soft light piercing through the darkness she'd surrounded herself with. There was a moment where vulnerability flickered in her eyes, one that almost felt like an invitation to relate on a deeper level. "I don't want to ruin anything," she said softly. "But I can't pretend everything is okay between us. I can't stand feeling like this anymore, like I'm constantly in your shadow." Jake felt the weight of those words resonate, an emotional truth hanging in the air. They were all grappling with the ripple effects of their past choices. All of them were imperfect, searching for connection, and while it felt like they were drifting apart, perhaps it was possible to reconstruct what had been broken. "You're right about one thing," he said, looking at her directly. "None of us can pretend anymore. But what if we faced our truths together instead of apart? What if we all found a way to let go of the shadows?" Emily's eyes locked with his, hope sparking anew, even as uncertainty loomed. They were standing on the precipice of a choice, and the next step felt monumental. Melissa took a step forward, her features softening. "I can't promise I won't trip over my past again, but maybe I'm ready to try. Together?" A small part of Jake wanted to flee from the tension that was coiling tighter, but he also sensed a shift, a tentative willingness to peel back the layers of hurt. He glanced at Emily, who nodded slowly, her expression a mix of fear and determination. As they all stood there, holding the unvoiced understanding of their shared complexities, a sudden thunderstorm erupted overhead, breaking their calm. It mirrored the emotions within. "Looks like we may have to face the storm after all," Ryan quipped, breaking the tension with a small smile. Despite it all, there was a glimmer of unity forming among them. But in the distance, shadows shifted and moved. What awaited them beyond this moment was anything but certain. Jake could feel the energy swirling, poised for what came next, and it whispered of deeper truths still waiting to be revealed. Would they claim their new beginnings or drown under the weight of the past? The rain came down in sheets, the droplets drumming a rhythm against the pavement. Shadowed figures scattered, searching for shelter, but Jake, Emily, Melissa, and Ryan stood their ground underneath the awning of the cafe. The world around them faded into a blur of water and noise, the storm amplifying their emotions instead of drowning them. "Should we go inside?" Ryan suggested, glancing at the cafe's warmly lit interior. It seemed like a safe haven compared to the brewing storm outside. "No," Emily said, shaking her head. "We need to talk. Not run away." Her voice was steady, filled with a resolve that surprised even her. Melissa nodded, her gaze fixed on the relentless rain. Jake felt a wave of admiration. Emily was taking charge, pushing against the tension that twisted between them. "I understand it's messy," Melissa said slowly, her voice barely rising above the sound of the rain, "but I don't want to keep pretending, not anymore. I don't want to live in shadows." "Then don't," Ryan interjected, his brow furrowing. "You don't have to be stuck in the past, Melissa. You've got to create your own path." His words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Every syllable was an acknowledgement of their shared struggles. "Creating a path is easier said than done," Melissa replied, wet strands of hair sticking to her face. She looked vulnerable, stripped of her usual defenses. "I've only known how to walk in circles." Jake stepped closer. "It's not about knowing how," he said softly. "It's about taking the first step, even if you're not sure where you're going. We can figure it out together." She met his gaze, and for a heartbeat, the storm outside was forgotten. There was a flicker of understanding between them, a tether woven through shared experience and unresolved emotions. Emily shifted, trying to bridge the gap. "If we're all willing to be honest, we might just find our way through this. I know it's scary, but holding on to hurt will only tie us down." Melissa's shoulders sagged, the weight of her emotions pulling her deeper into thought. "You're right. I've been clinging to my hurt, waiting for someone to tell me it's okay. But it's not just that. I never wanted to see you both happy together. And that S on me," she confessed, the admission spilling out like rainwater cleansing, raw. Jake's heart clenched. He had always seen Melissa as a foe, someone who stood between him and the life he wanted, yet her vulnerability opened a door to understanding. "You deserve happiness, too, Melissa. We all do. What if I mess up?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly, the fear evident. "What if I can't let go?" "We'll be there," Emily replied, determination shining in her eyes. "To catch you if you fall, just like you can catch us. That's what building something new means. Together." The weight of their shared journey pressed down, but it felt less like a burden now. It felt like a promise. The storm rumbled on, but inside, something new stirred. Melissa took a shaky breath. "Okay, then let us try. I'm scared, but I want to be brave. For all of us." Jake shot a glance at Ryan, who smiled encouragingly, and then back to Emily. They were stepping towards something transformative, something that could heal the cracks in their foundations. The storm outside pounded harder, but the warmth inside their gathered emotions felt like a shelter against the cold reality that had often pulled them apart. That was when a crack of thunder struck, and, in its wake, Jake noticed something from the corner of his eye. A figure stood by the edge of the sidewalk, drenched but unmistakable. It was Sarah, his sister, eyes wide with concern as she watched them, clearly caught off guard. "Jake," she called, and her voice cut through the thunder, pulling him back to the moment. Everything shifted. "What's wrong?" he shouted back, his heart racing. As she took a step closer, something in her expression, urgency mixed with something darker, sent a flicker of anxiety through him. What was she here to say? In that moment, he realized. The past might make them stumble, but the future remained unwritten. And whatever news Sarah carried might just be the next storm they had to navigate together. "What's going on?" he asked again, the urgency in his voice rising. And the rain fell harder still. Sarah's face was pale, her eyes darting to the others for a quick second, then focusing back on Jake. "It's Mom," she said, her voice shaky. "She's in the hospital." The words hit Jake like a lightning bolt, ripping through the tension that had been building among them. In an instant, all frustrations and side characters faded away, leaving only a gaping hole in his chest. "What? What happened?" He managed to stammer, the world around him narrowing down to only Sarah and the terrible news she bore. "She collapsed," she said, her voice a mixture of worry and urgency. "The doctors think it might be serious. We need to go now." Emily squeezed Jake's hand tighter, as though anchoring him to the here and now. He could feel her pulse of warmth against his overwhelming fear. "I'll come with you," she said without hesitation, and Ryan nodded in agreement. "No, you don't all have to," but before Jake could finish, he recognized the determination in Emily's eyes. This was more than just family. It was about solidarity, about being present together in a time of need. As they rushed through the rain, the storm mirrored the chaos inside him. He'd always felt the walls closing in when it came to his relationship with his mother, the unspoken resentments, the regrets of neglect. But now all of that worked its way into an urgency that propelled him forward. When they arrived at the hospital, the fluorescent lights glared down the long hallway, reflecting their apprehension. Jake's heart raced as they entered the waiting room, filled with muted whispers and anxious faces. It felt sterile, too still for the storm brewing inside him. He paced back and forth. Rounds of vulnerability and candidness lay behind them like a wave swelling, yet he felt unprepared to face the turmoil of family dynamics that awaited. He had spent too many years avoiding the tight-knit complications of his upbringing. Just then, a doctor stepped into the waiting area, a serious but kind expression on his face. "Family of Rose Thompson?" Jake stepped forward, eyes wide. "That's my mom. How is she?" "She's stable now, but we need to monitor her closely. We'll run some tests. You can see her briefly, but let's keep it quick." "Thank you," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. As he pushed open the door to her room, his heart raced. There she lay, frail and hooked up to machines that beeped softly. Her eyes opened, and for the first time in years, he felt his heart ache, not out of resentment, but with a longing to connect. "Jake?" she croaked, the fragility of her voice hitting him hard. "Hey, Mom," he said softly, approaching cautiously as if he might shatter the moment. "What happened?" "I've been struggling. I didn't want to worry you. Why didn't you tell me?" He felt that familiar mix of anger and sadness swell up, the layers of hurt unfurling now that it was all laid bare. "I thought you had enough on your plate," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't want to burden you." Self-doubt and sorrow washed over him. "It's not a burden. We're family." His voice cracked as he wrestled with emotions he had shoved aside for too long. With Emily and Ryan silently supporting him from the doorway, something in that moment shifted. This was their opportunity to begin anew, to address the things left unsaid, the bitterness that hung in the air like a dark cloud. "Mom, I want to mend things between us. I know it's messy, but I'm here. Let's not keep pretending everything is fine. I want to understand, I want to know you again." Her gaze softened, the hope flickering in her expression mingling with regret. "I'm scared, Jake. I'm scared of what you'll find. Things aren't perfect." "I don't want perfect," he said earnestly, stepping closer. "I want real." Jake felt Emily's hand press against his back, her warmth radiating through the pain in the room. He looked at her, a silent promise exchanged. They'd face this together. As they left the hospital later, a sense of clarity blossomed in Jake's heart. They had taken the first steps toward healing, not just with his mother, but also within himself, towards Emily, and even towards Melissa. The rain finally began to ease, just like the tensions that had surrounded their journeys. Jake felt lighter. They had the power to define their narrative, to grow stronger even in the shadows. As they walked under the dim glow of streetlights, he was reminded that although storms come and go, what remains are the connections they forge amidst the downpour. "I think we can do this," he whispered to Emily, who smiled up at him with a radiant hope. "Yes," she replied earnestly. "Step by step." And he knew this was just the beginning. Now, as you join me in this uplifting resolution, I need you to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people find these tales of transformation. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Do not wait one more second, let us spread this message together.